On January 19th, 2026, something important happened in China. The National Bureau of Statistics shared new numbers. These numbers showed that China had a very low number of births in 2025. Only 7.92 million babies were born. This was a historical low, meaning it had not happened before. It was the lowest number since the People's Republic of China was started in 1949. This news was a big shock for people who study populations around the world. Births had dropped greatly. In 2024, 9.54 million babies were born. But in 2025, it was 7.92 million. This was a 17% drop. Also, the number of births was now half of what it was in 2016. Then, about 18 million babies were born. At the same time, more people died. In 2025, 11.31 million people passed away. This means that China's population got smaller by 3.39 million people in just 1 year. This was the fourth year in a row that the population decreased. This drop was the biggest ever seen, except for a very bad famine between 1959 and 1961. This quick fall started in 2022. That year, for the first time in over 60 years, more people died than were born. Experts thought this would happen, but not so soon. They believed China's population would keep growing until about 2030. But it started shrinking almost 10 years earlier. This shows that the decline is happening much faster than anyone thought possible. This book is about a big problem. China's population is not just getting smaller, it is collapsing. This fall is happening at a speed never seen before when there is no war. China used to be known for having many people. Its great rise in the world was built on having a huge number of young workers. This large workforce helped China make many things and grow its economy very fast. China made about 30% of all goods in the world because it had so many workers. Its big population also meant many people to buy things, which helped its businesses. But now this strong part of China is becoming weak. The birth numbers from 2025 are not just simple facts. They mean millions of future workers will not be there in 20 years. They mean fewer people to buy homes, cars, and other goods in the future. China will be a country that is getting smaller and older at the same time. More old people will need support, but fewer young people will be working. So a big question comes to mind. How did China, a nation that always wanted to grow and be strong, cause its own population to disappear? The world sees China as a very powerful country, getting stronger every day. But the truth is, China has fewer and fewer babies.
This chapter starts our story by showing this big difference between how China looks and what is really happening inside its homes and families. To understand this, we must look at China's past decisions about its people. 2. How it started. To understand China's population problem today, we must look back many years. Let's travel back to the 1950s, soon after the Communist Party took control in 1949. At that time, Mao Zedong led China. He had a very different idea about people than leaders today. For him, a large population was not a problem, it was a great advantage. Mao believed that more people meant a stronger country. He thought more people meant more workers, more soldiers, and more power for the nation. Because of this, the new government told families to have many children. They even gave money to families for children and made it hard to use birth control, get abortions, or have sterilizations. Mao wanted China to become a powerful country, and he believed a big population would help achieve this goal. With this policy and better healthcare, China's population grew very fast. In the 1950s, many Chinese families, especially in farming areas, routinely had 6 or even more children. The country's population quickly went from about 583 million in 1953 to over 646 million by 1957. It was a time of rapid growth. But this idea of more people, more power, soon led to a great and tragic period. In 1958, Mao launched a huge plan called the Great Leap Forward. He wanted to change China from a farming country into an industrial country very quickly. But the plan failed badly. Farmers were told to leave their fields and instead make steel in small, inefficient furnaces. Because of this, grain production dropped sharply. Local officials, afraid of punishment, reported false numbers about how much food was grown. They said there was plenty of food, but in reality there was not. This led to a terrible national famine. From 1959 to 1961, millions of people died because they had no food. Estimates say 30 million people died, but some researchers believe the number was as high as 45 million. This great Chinese famine was one of the deadliest in all human history. It caused countless deaths and also stopped many births, as people were too weak and hungry to have children. This period left a deep and painful scar on the nation. People remembered the fear of starvation, a psychological trauma. This fear later pushed the government to control population growth, no matter the cost. When the famine finally ended in 1961, China saw a new baby boom. Couples who had waited to have children during the crisis began having them. Birth rates went up again for a while, and the population grew very fast, passing 800 million by 1969. But this quick growth then started to worry China's leaders.
By the early 1970s, they realized that too many people would use up resources and make it harder for China to become a modern, strong country. This concern led to a big change in policy. In 1971, China began the Later, Longer, Fewer campaign. This plan asked people to marry later, wait longer between births, and have fewer children, usually no more than 2 or 3. It was a huge shift from Mao's first idea of encouraging large families. This period showed how the government could drastically change its mind, from pushing for more children to asking for fewer. This sudden change from one extreme to another, from have more kids to stop having kids, laid the groundwork for the major population crisis China faces today. It sowed the seeds of the current disaster. 3. The one-child rule. On September 25, 1980, China started a new and very strict rule, the one-child policy. This rule changed the lives of over 1 billion people. The government said it was a necessary step to control population growth and help China become modern. What was meant to be a short-term sacrifice lasted for 35 years, leaving lasting effects on Chinese society. The policy generally limited city families to 1 child. Rural families could sometimes have a second if their first was a daughter. Some ethnic minority groups were often exempt from these rules. Following the policy brought benefits like better health care or housing.
But breaking the rule led to harsh punishments. Families faced large fines, sometimes equal to 10% of their yearly salary for many years for each extra child. Children born without permission might not get official government papers, hukou, making it hard to access schooling or health care. In extreme cases, pregnancies were ended by force, even in late stages. The number of forced actions was shocking. In 1983 alone, officials performed 14.4 million abortions, 20.7 million sterilizations, mostly on women, and 17.8 million devices inserted to prevent pregnancy. Many of these procedures were involuntary. Over the 35 years, officials acknowledged performing 336 million abortions and 196 million sterilizations. To compare, the total abortions are more than the current population of the United States. Women were dragged from their homes for forced procedures. Families hid pregnant women. Relatives were sometimes imprisoned until a woman had an abortion. Local officials, under pressure to meet targets, used strong tactics. A harrowing case from 2012 involved Fang Jianmei, a rural woman 7 months pregnant. She was forced into a hospital and her baby was aborted because she and her husband could not pay a $6,000 fine for a second child. Such incidents were not rare, but a result of a system that rewarded officials for hitting demographic targets.
An extensive network tracked women's menstrual cycles and pregnancies to enforce compliance. By the mid-1980s, these harsh rules caused anger, especially in rural areas where families relied on sons for farm work and old age support. Forced abortions and sterilizations led to violent confrontations. Reports of female infanticide and abandonment grew as desperate families sought to ensure their one child was male. In response to this, the government added some flexibility in 1984, allowing rural families with a daughter to have a second child after a waiting period. However, these changes did little to stop the long-term problems already taking shape. A major unintended consequence was the gender imbalance. China's cultural preference for sons, combined with sex-selective abortion technology, led to many more boys being born than girls. By 2000, there were 119 boys for every 100 girls, far above the natural ratio. This created a generation with millions of missing women. By 2020, experts estimated 24 million more men than women of marriageable age. These bare branches, unmarried men, were often concentrated in poor rural areas, contributing to social problems like increased crime and trafficking of women. The policy also led to the Little Emperor syndrome, where only children, often showered with attention and resources, sometimes became overly dependent or lacked social skills.
Perhaps most importantly, the one-child policy fundamentally changed Chinese attitudes towards family size. Researchers noted that the policy changed 2 or 3 generations of people's attitudes towards childbirth. Having one child became a deep-seated social norm. This cultural shift proved stronger than the policy itself. Even when the government started to relax the rules in 2013, allowing some couples to have 2 children, few did. Among 11 million eligible couples, only 15% applied for a second child by 2015. This quiet response showed that economic pressures, career demands, and the new family norm now influence choices more than government rules. On January 1, 2016, China officially ended the one-child policy, allowing all couples to have 2 children.
In 2021, facing sharp declines in births, the limit was raised to 3 children. But by then, the damage was done. Decades of restricting fertility had created a unique population structure, and reversing this mindset proved almost impossible for any new policy to quickly fix. One child, many old people. For a country's population to stay the same size, each woman needs to have about 2.1 children. This is known as the replacement rate. When the birth rate falls below this, the population will start to get smaller over time.
In China, this number is now very low, around 0.9 or 1 child per woman by 2025. This low number means that China's population will definitely get smaller in the future. The one-child policy created a unique problem for families. It led to what is called the 4-to-1 family structure. In this structure, one child has 4 grandparents and 2 parents. This single child now carries the heavy burden of supporting 6 older relatives. This is not just a theory, it is a real situation for many young people in China today. By the year 2035, about 400 million Chinese citizens will be older than 60 years. This number will be almost 30% of the total population. These older people will need care and support. The working-age people, often only children, must provide this care while also dealing with their own lives. They face strong demands from their jobs and need money for their own children if they choose to have any. With no brothers or sisters to help, this pressure can be overwhelming. This heavy burden makes many young Chinese couples choose not to have more children, or sometimes any children at all. Life in China's big cities is very expensive. Housing near good schools costs a lot of money. Education and childcare expenses are also very high. On top of this, the work culture is very tough.
Many jobs expect people to follow a 9-9-6 schedule, meaning they work from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, 6 days a week. This leaves little time or energy for family life. Young people also face challenges finding stable jobs, and job insecurity is a common worry. For women, the situation is even harder. Many companies are less likely to hire women because they might get pregnant and need time off for a baby, which can hurt their career chances. Due to these pressures, a new social trend has appeared among young people. It is called the lying flat movement. Young people in this movement choose not to work too hard or try to achieve traditional success. They also often decide not to marry, feeling that the pressure of life and work is too high. They believe that the cost of living and the intense competition make it very difficult to succeed in the usual way, so they opt out of trying to meet these high expectations. This widespread feeling of pressure and hopelessness has also greatly affected marriage rates. The number of marriages in China has dropped sharply, falling by 40% in just 1 decade. From 12.5 million marriages in 2012, the number went down to only 7.5 million in 2021. This is the lowest number since the 1980s. Young Chinese people are waiting longer to get married, or they are choosing not to marry at all. In China, most children are born to married couples.
So fewer marriages directly lead to fewer babies. This means that the next generation might not just be small, it might not exist at all. The very foundation of new families is weakening, leaving a future with fewer and fewer young people to support the growing number of elderly. 5. Money problems. China's amazing economic growth for the last 40 years had a main secret: many young workers.
When China started its new economic plan in the late 1970s, it had a huge number of young people. These workers were strong and ready to work. Hundreds of millions of them left their farms. They moved to big cities and worked in factories near the coast. They were happy to work long hours for low pay. This large group of cheap workers helped China become known as the world's factory. By 2021, China made about 30% of all manufactured goods on Earth. This factory work was not just for selling things abroad. It was the main support for China's whole economy. It built roads, cities, and made China powerful. But this situation is changing now. The number of working-age people is getting smaller. The workforce is shrinking fast. By 2022, China had 50 million fewer workers than 10 years before. This means there are fewer hands to work in the factories. Because there are fewer workers, salaries are going up. So labor is now more expensive and harder to find. This causes big problems for businesses.
Many factories in China are now struggling. Some are closing their doors. Others are moving their production to different countries where labor is still cheap. This change means that China's big advantage of cheap workers is disappearing. This shift makes economic growth slower and changes China's place in the global market. China is now in a difficult situation. People call it getting old before getting rich. This means China's population is getting old very quickly, but the country is not yet a rich nation. Look at countries like Japan, South Korea, or those in Western Europe. They became very rich before many of their people got old. They built strong systems to care for the elderly, like good pensions and health care. China, however, is facing a rapidly aging population, while its economy is still only in the middle income range. For example, in 2025, the average income per person in China was about $13,000 to $14,000. This is much less than countries like the United States, where it's around $75,000. China does not have the same wealth to pay for all the needs of its growing number of old people. With fewer young people working and more old people needing help, who will pay for everything? The number of old people is growing very, very fast. By 2035, around 400 million Chinese will be over 60 years old. This will be almost 1 out of every 3 people in the country. This creates a huge problem for China's money systems, especially pensions. Fewer workers mean less money paid in taxes, but more old people mean higher costs for pensions, medical care, and daily support. Today, pension costs are about 4% of China's total economy. But experts from Australia say that by 2100, pension costs could be as high as 20% of the economy. This means China will have to spend much, much more money on its elderly, but it will have fewer workers to earn that money. This is a big debt crisis waiting to happen. For many years, China's economy grew very, very fast. It often grew by more than 10% every year. This happened in the 1990s and 2000s, but those days are gone forever. The economic growth has already slowed down a lot. It is now around 5% each year. In 2022, the economy only grew 3%. This was one of the lowest growth rates China had seen since 1976. Because there are fewer workers and many more old people, experts believe China will not see 10% growth again. This demographic problem means the economy cannot grow as fast as before. This will affect how much money people have and how stable the country is. China's leaders will have to find new ways to manage the economy because the old way of fast growth is finished. 6. The army and power. A country's strength often includes its military.
The size of a nation's population has a big effect on its army. For China, the changing number of people is also changing its military power and its place in the world. China will soon have fewer young men. These are the men who are typically of military age and can join the army. With fewer people being born each year, the group of young adults is shrinking. This means China will have a smaller pool of people to choose from when recruiting soldiers. A smaller group of military-age men directly translates to a smaller army, especially for ground forces, which need many people. Even with modern weapons and new technology, a country still needs many soldiers to staff its forces. As fewer young men are available, China's military strength might become weaker over time. This could make it harder for China to defend its long borders or to show its power far from home. The quality and size of its armed forces are directly linked to its population numbers. Many of these young men are only children. For a long time, due to strict government rules, most Chinese families had just one child. These only children are very important to their parents and grandparents. They are sometimes called little emperors because they receive all the family's attention and resources. For these families, losing their single child in a war would mean the end of their family name and bloodline. This is a very deep fear.
Such strong family ties and the fear of this loss could make it hard for the military to find enough willing soldiers. It might also affect the spirit of the soldiers who do join, making the army less eager to enter dangerous fights. If soldiers are worried about their families, it can change how they fight. Some experts believe China is now at its strongest point in terms of power and influence. They call this peak China. This idea means that China will likely only become weaker in the future. This is because its population is quickly getting older and shrinking. Because of this upcoming decline, Chinese leaders might feel a strong need to act quickly to achieve important national goals. They might believe they have a limited time to use China's current strength before it starts to fade. This creates a sense of urgency in Beijing. One very important goal for China is Taiwan. China sees Taiwan as a part of its own country and wants to unite it with the mainland. The concern is that China might become more aggressive about Taiwan in the near future. This could happen because its leaders believe their best chance to take Taiwan might close as their demographic problems worsen. If they wait too long, China's military power and economic ability to support a large conflict could be less. This creates a very tense situation in the region. Beijing's feeling that its window of opportunity is closing could lead to bigger risks.
This demographic anxiety might fuel more aggressive actions around Taiwan and in other areas where China has disagreements with its neighbors. The countdown on this strategic window for China has begun. 7. Trying to fix it. The government in China made a very big change. For many years, it told families to have only one child. This was the one-child policy. But now, the government wants people to have more babies. This sudden change showed how worried leaders were. In 2016, all couples could have 2 children. In 2021, the limit rose to 3. By 2024, many local governments stopped setting any limits at all. They just wanted more births. To encourage more children, the government started offering money and other help. They gave some money each year for young children, about $500 for each child under 3. Some cities gave more, especially for a second or third child. They also removed fees for some public kindergartens and extended maternity leave. Tax breaks were offered to families with children to help with costs. These efforts seemed large, but few people chose to have more babies. The money offered was often too little. Raising a child in a Chinese city costs a lot. Expenses for housing, education, and daily care can easily reach tens of thousands of dollars each year. $500 was not enough to change a family's decision about another child. There was also a clear irony.
For decades, the government worked to stop births, making birth control free. Now they removed tax exemptions for contraception, making items like condoms more expensive with a 13% tax. The message was clear. The state wanted more pregnancies. The government also criticized young people who chose not to work hard or get married, movements called lying flat. Many women were simply saying no to having more children. They faced big pressures. Working women felt they had to choose between their careers and having a family. Taking time off for a baby could hurt their job chances. Employers sometimes did not want to hire women because they might get pregnant. The cost of living was too high and work pressure too intense. Women felt too tired and stressed to raise many children. Even with new laws to protect mothers at work, problems continued. Other East Asian countries, like Japan and South Korea, tried for decades to make people have more babies. They offered good parental leave and childcare help, but these countries saw very few results. Their birth rates remained stubbornly low. This shows it is very hard to change people's minds about having children once small families become normal. The government in China learned a very hard lesson. For 40 long years, it taught people to have small families. Now, that idea is deeply set in the minds of generations. It is like trying to quickly change how people think about something very basic to their lives.
People are used to having one child, or maybe two. They have built their lives around this idea. They worry about the future and high costs. It is proving very difficult for the government to undo this deep social change quickly, no matter how many incentives they offer. The policies of the past created a lasting problem that money and new rules could not easily fix. What comes next? China's path forward is now clear. Experts believe its population will become much smaller. By the year 2050, China could have around 1.3 billion people. By the year 2100, this number might drop to below 800 million. This means China's population could be cut in half over this century. Some people even think it could fall to 450 million. This is a huge change, like losing almost 1 billion people. In 2025, China had only 7.92 million births. This was a drop of 17% from the year before. This rapid fall shocked many experts. It was a seismic shock because the number of new babies was cut in half in less than 10 years from its peak in 2016. This big change will touch the whole world. For the past 40 years, China grew fast. This growth was based on having a huge, young, and growing population. This made China the world's factory, producing about 30% of all manufactured goods globally.
Its large population also made a big market for things made inside China, like cars and homes. Now, China's workforce is shrinking quickly. There will be fewer young people to work in factories or buy products. This means China's economy will grow more slowly. Its economy used to grow by more than 10% each year. Now it grows around 5%. This slowdown will affect global supply chains. Other countries may need to find new places to buy goods or build factories. The number of elderly people will grow much faster than the number of young workers. This means fewer workers will have to support more retirees. This is called the old age dependency ratio, and it will become a very big burden. Also, fewer workers mean fewer people paying taxes. But there will be more old people needing pensions and health care. This is a big problem. China might become old before it becomes rich. Other countries like Japan got rich first, then they got old. China does not have this advantage, which makes the problem harder. This also changes China's power in the world. A smaller number of young people means fewer people for the army. If a country has fewer young people, it can become less dynamic and less powerful. Some think China's leaders may feel they need to act fast on issues like Taiwan or in other parts of Asia. They might think their time of being strong is limited before their population gets much older and weaker.
This sense of urgency could make them take more risks. The numbers are very clear. When a country has very few births for many years, its population will surely go down. This is not just a guess, it is a mathematical fact. China's past rules about having children created this future. The population decline is not something that can be stopped easily. It is irreversible without many people moving into the country, which China is not likely to allow. It is like a slow, big change happening right before our eyes. The low birth numbers from 2025 are not a small problem. They show what China's future will be, a future shaped by demography. Imagine a China in the future. It might be much quieter and less energetic. It will have many older people and fewer young faces. This is very different from the strong, growing China the world saw for decades. It is a future where the country focuses more on caring for its older citizens and where innovation might slow down. The dragon's twilight is not just a story, it is becoming a reality. The empty cradles, once a shocking statistic, point to a silent, aging nation ahead. What changes do you think China will need to make as its population gets older and smaller?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.